My name is Caitlin Richards, 67 years old, and I never expected to raise children again at retirement age. That Thursday afternoon when my daughter Melanie dropped off my 3 grandchildren for what she called just an hour, something in her eyes should have warned me. Hours turned to days, days to weeks, and eventually to 13 years of rebuilding our lives together. Then suddenly, there she was on my doorstep, with a lawyer accusing me of kidnapping the children she abandoned. Nobody knew about the envelope I'd kept all those years until I placed it in the judge's hands. As I share how this unexpected journey changed all our lives forever, let me know where you're watching from, and subscribe if my story resonates with your heart. I had settled into a comfortable retirement in my suburban Minnesota home. My golden years were supposed to be filled with book clubs, gardening, and occasional travel with my senior friends. After 40 years of teaching elementary school, I had earned this peaceful chapter of my life. My small 2-bedroom townhouse was perfect for one person who occasionally hosted grandchildren for weekend visits. My relationship with my daughter Melanie had always been complicated. Since her teenage years, she struggled with substance abuse issues and fell into a pattern of unstable relationships. At 32, she had 3 children from different relationships and moved frequently between apartments, jobs, and boyfriends. I tried to help when I could, but Melanie often rejected my assistance, claiming I was too judgmental about her lifestyle choices. That Thursday in April started like any other spring day. I was planting new flowers in my small garden when a car I didn't recognize pulled into my driveway. I stood up brushing dirt from my knees as Melanie stepped out. She looked thinner than when I had last seen her 4 months ago. Behind her, 3 small children climbed out of the car. "Mom, I need a huge favor," Melanie said, not bothering with a greeting. Her eyes darted around nervously, never quite meeting mine. "Can you watch the kids for just an hour? I have an emergency to handle." Despite our strained relationship, I immediately agreed. My grandchildren visited occasionally, but never all 3 at once, and never without advance notice. Jackson, the oldest at 6, stood protectively near his siblings. He had Melanie's brown eyes, but a seriousness no child his age should possess. Lily, 4 years old, held her brother's hand while chattering about the butterfly she saw in my garden. Little Noah, just 2, clung to Melanie's leg, crying softly. "What's the emergency?" I asked, concerned by her obvious nervousness. "Just some paperwork for a new job," she answered too quickly. "Super important, can't reschedule. I'll be back before dinner." Each child carried a small backpack, which struck me as odd for just an hour's visit. Jackson's blue backpack looked stuffed full compared to the others. "Do they need anything special while they're here? Any medications or allergies I should know about?" I asked. "No, they're fine. Everything they need is in their bags," Melanie said, already backing toward her car. She gave each child a quick hug. "Be good for Grandma. I'll be back soon." As she drove away, I noticed she didn't look back once in her rearview mirror. The first hour passed pleasantly enough. I made the children peanut butter sandwiches and set up coloring books at my kitchen table. Noah stopped crying after finding my old stuffed bear in the closet. By the second hour, I started calling Melanie's cell phone. It went straight to voicemail each time. "Your mom might be running late," I told the children with forced cheerfulness. "Let's watch a movie until she gets back." By evening, my concern had grown into full-blown anxiety. 6 calls to Melanie went unanswered. I tried texting. "Where are you?" kids are asking. No response. Jackson didn't ask about his mother once, which worried me more than if he had. Lily asked twice, accepting my vague answers, with a child's trust that adults would handle everything. Noah had fallen asleep on my lap during the movie, his chubby fingers clutching my shirt. I faced a difficult decision as bedtime approached. My spare bedroom had a queen bed where the children could sleep, but I had no pajamas for them, no toothbrushes, no familiar bedtime stories. I checked their backpacks and found one change of clothes, each a few favorite toys, and basic toiletries. "Where does Noah usually sleep?" I asked Jackson as I prepared the bed. "In his crib," he answered quietly, "but sometimes on the couch when we stay at Rick's place." Rick was Melanie's latest boyfriend as far as I knew. I had never met him. That night I tucked all 3 children into my spare bed. Lily cried for her mother, and Noah followed suit without understanding why. Jackson remained stoically silent, patting his sister's back until she fell asleep. I sat in my living room all night, phone in hand, watching the clock tick past midnight, then 1, then 4 in the morning. My daughter had never disappeared like this before, not without a word. Something was very wrong, or something had changed. Neither possibility brought me comfort as dawn broke over my suddenly full house. By noon the next day, reality was setting in. 24 hours had passed, and Melanie still wasn't answering her phone. I left increasingly urgent voicemails. "Melanie, please call me back. The children are asking for you. Melanie, I'm getting worried. Just let me know you're okay. Melanie, this isn't funny anymore. You need to come back for your children." After 36 hours, I called the police to file a missing person report. The officer who took my information seemed less than concerned when I mentioned Melanie's history of substance abuse. "Ma'am, given her background, she's probably just on a bender. Adults have the right to go missing if they want to," he said. "Since the children are safe with you, this isn't a high-priority case. We'll take the information, but don't expect much." I felt helpless and angry as I hung up the phone. While the children played in my living room, I decided to thoroughly check their backpacks for any clue about Melanie's plans or whereabouts. In Jackson's blue backpack underneath a worn dinosaur t-shirt, I found a sealed envelope. Inside was a handwritten note and $300 in $20 bills. "Mom needs time. Please take care of them." 5 words. 5 simple words that changed everything. This wasn't an emergency or a misunderstanding. Melanie had planned this. She had deliberately left her children with me, with no intention of returning quickly. I sat on my bedroom floor and cried for the first time since she'd left. I cried for the children, for myself, and even for Melanie, who must have been in a desperate place to abandon her babies. But I made sure the children never saw these moments of weakness. For them, I maintained a calm facade and kept reassuring them that everything would be okay. The practical challenges were overwhelming. Noah was still in diapers, and I had only the few that were in his backpack. Lily had wet the bed the first night, and I had no plastic mattress covers. Jackson needed to continue kindergarten, but his school was 30 miles away, and I had no car seat for Noah. My retirement budget wasn't designed to suddenly feed 3 extra people. The children's confusion gradually turned to fear as they realized their mother wasn't coming back soon. Lily started having nightmares, waking up screaming for her mother. Noah became increasingly clingy, wailing if I stepped out of his sight even to use the bathroom. Jackson grew quieter, watching me with wary eyes, as if expecting me to disappear too. During a quiet moment while the younger ones napped, Jackson revealed disturbing details about their living situation before coming to me. "Mom's boyfriend didn't like us making noise," he whispered. "We had to be super quiet or stay in the bedroom all day. Sometimes there wasn't food if Mom didn't come home." I hugged him tightly, my heart breaking at the matter-of-fact way he described neglect. "You don't have to be quiet here, Jackson. And there will always be food, I promise." I tried contacting Melanie's friends, only to discover she had apparently cut ties with most people I knew. When I called her last known workplace, they told me she had quit 3 weeks earlier. A call to her landlord revealed she had vacated her apartment nearly a month before bringing the children to me. This had been planned well in advance. By the end of the first week, we had established a tentative routine. I converted my home office back into a bedroom, moving in a twin bed from a neighbor for Jackson, while the younger ones shared the queen. I found a second-hand crib for Noah at a church sale. A fellow retiree from my teaching days loaned me her grandchildren's car seats. The 1-month mark passed with no word from Melanie. Each day the children asked about her less frequently. Each night I checked my phone less hopefully. My retirement savings, meant to last 20 years, were now being stretched in ways I never anticipated. I applied for government assistance, swallowing my pride for the sake of 3 innocent children who had no one else. After 6 weeks, I had to face the painful truth Melanie likely wasn't coming back anytime soon, if ever. These children needed stability school, enrollment, medical care, and legal protection. I could provide none of these things without legal authority. With a heavy heart, I made an appointment with a family law attorney to discuss my options. The family law office was not a place I ever expected to find myself at 68 years old. The attorney, Sandra Williams, listened carefully to my situation, her expression growing more concerned as I explained the circumstances. "This is abandonment. Plain and simple," she said when I finished. "You need to file for emergency temporary guardianship immediately. Without legal standing, you can't enroll the children in school, authorize medical treatment, or access benefits they're entitled to." The legal process was bewildering and expensive. I needed to document Melanie's abandonment, prove my suitability as a guardian, and notify any known fathers of the proceedings. Noah's father, Rick Stevens, was located through child support records. He wanted nothing to do with the situation, readily signing away his parental rights rather than paying support. For Jackson and Lily, no fathers were listed on their birth certificates, another complication in the legal proceedings. The temporary guardianship hearing was scheduled for 2 months after Melanie left. During those challenging weeks, I faced obstacles at every turn. Jackson needed to be enrolled in a new school, but administrators required legal documentation I didn't yet have. Noah developed an ear infection, and the pediatrician was reluctant to treat him without parental consent. Lily had nightmares, almost nightly, but I couldn't afford the child psychologist recommended by our family doctor. A social worker visited my home to evaluate its suitability for 3 children. While she was sympathetic to our situation, she pointed out several areas of concern: my age, the small size of my townhouse, and my limited income as a retiree. "Children need stability," she said, not unkindly. "Can you realistically provide that into their adulthood given your age and resources?" It was a question that kept me awake at night. I was 68, healthy but not young. Jackson would be just 19 when I turned 80. Could I do this? Did I have a choice? 4 months after Melanie disappeared, we received the first postcard. No return address, postmarked from Las Vegas, with a brief message, "Kids okay, thinking of you all." I recognized Melanie's handwriting immediately. I showed it to the children, who had mixed reactions. Jackson turned away uninterested. Lily studied her mother's handwriting with tears in her eyes. Noah, too young to understand, just patted the colorful picture of the Las Vegas Strip. I kept the postcard in a special box along with the original note from Jackson's backpack. Over the following months, similar postcards arrived from different cities: Phoenix, San Diego, Denver. Never with contact information, never with a meaningful message, just enough to prove she was alive and thinking of the children, but not enough to help them understand why she left. The legal fees quickly drained my savings. I sold my collection of antique silver passed down from my grandmother. I canceled my supplemental health insurance. I taught piano lessons to neighborhood children for extra income. Every penny went to attorney fees, children's needs, or household expenses. Some family members were judgmental about Melanie's disappearance, implying I must have done something to drive her away. Others stepped up with remarkable generosity. My sister Jane drove 4 hours every other weekend to help with childcare. My former teaching colleagues organized clothing drives for the growing children. My elderly neighbors took turns preparing extra portions of dinner to share with us. 6 months after Melanie left, the court granted me temporary legal guardianship of all 3 children. The judge, a stern woman in her 50s, addressed me directly after issuing her ruling. Mrs. Richards, the court recognizes the extraordinary circumstances that brought these children into your care. This temporary arrangement allows you to make educational and medical decisions for 1 year, after which we'll reevaluate the situation. The court still hopes for reunification with the mother if circumstances change. Thanksgiving and Christmas arrived with no sign of Melanie beyond another postcard from Santa Fe. I created new traditions for the children, keeping photographs of their mother prominently displayed so they wouldn't forget her. We made handprint ornaments for the Christmas tree and started a tradition of each person sharing one good thing that happened that year. Jackson said his good thing was living with Grandma Cat. Lily said hers was my new pink bedroom. Noah, now 3, and speaking in full sentences, said cookies and milk while patting my cheek. I didn't share my good thing aloud, that despite everything these 3 children had brought purpose back to my life when I thought that chapter was closed. As we approached the 1-year mark of Melanie's departure, I began preparations to file for permanent guardianship. The temporary arrangement was never meant to be a long-term solution, and the children needed the security of knowing their home with me was permanent. By then, I had sold most of my valuable possessions, downsized my car, and taken a part-time job as a school library assistant to make ends meet. The postcards continued to arrive every few months now, my only evidence that Melanie was still alive somewhere, choosing to remain apart from her children. After 18 months in my small townhouse, it became clear we needed more space. The children were growing, and sharing bedrooms was becoming problematic as they developed their own interests and needs for privacy. My townhouse association had also begun complaining about the noise and the toys occasionally left in common areas. With great reluctance, I sold my retirement home and purchased a modest 3-bedroom house in a less expensive neighborhood. The house was older, with outdated appliances and worn carpeting, but it had a fenced backyard where the children could play, and enough bedrooms for everyone to have their own space. Moving was bittersweet. My townhouse represented the retirement I had planned after decades of teaching. The new house symbolized our unexpected life together, not what any of us had envisioned, but now our reality. Jackson, now 8, helped pack his own belongings with solemn efficiency. Lily, 6, was excited about decorating her new room with butterfly wallpaper. Noah, 4, was confused by the changes, but thrilled about the backyard swing set left by the previous owners. "Is this our forever house?" Lily asked, as we unpacked kitchen boxes. "Yes, sweetheart," I answered, realizing as I said it that I meant it. "This is our home now." I had taken a part-time job at the local library, working during school hours to avoid childcare costs. My retirement savings were nearly depleted by legal fees and housing costs, but the children's needs were being met. We weren't living luxuriously, but we were stable. Each child was adjusting differently to their new life. Jackson excelled in mathematics, but struggled with reading, requiring extra tutoring I could barely afford. Lily was artistically talented, filling sketchbooks with colorful family portraits that always included a distant figure she identified as Mom, watching from far away. Noah, the least affected by Melanie's absence due to his young age, had nevertheless developed severe separation anxiety, panicking if I was out of his sight at kindergarten drop-off. We maintained memory boxes for each child containing photographs of Melanie and the occasional postcards that still arrived. I was careful to explain her absence in age-appropriate ways. Your mom loves you but is having a hard time taking care of herself right now, so she asked me to take care of you until things get better for her. This explanation grew less satisfying as the children got older. Jackson, approaching 10, began asking pointed questions. If she loves us, why doesn't she call? Why doesn't she visit on birthdays? Why didn't she leave a way for us to contact her? I had no good answers. The postcards continued to arrive now, from places like Chicago, Atlanta, and Miami, but never with return addresses or phone numbers. Each one contained the same impersonal message, thinking of you all. Hope everyone is well. Nothing that would help the children understand or heal. The court granted me permanent legal guardianship after Melanie failed to respond to legally required newspaper notices about the proceedings. The judge's decision gave us legal stability, but emotional questions remained. The children now called me Grandma Cat most of the time, but occasionally Lily or Noah would slip and call me Mom, causing immediate awkward silence as Jackson would correct them sharply. I joined a support group for grandparents, raising grandchildren, finding comfort in sharing experiences with others in similar situations. Many were raising grandchildren due to parental substance abuse or incarceration. Few faced our particular circumstance of deliberate abandonment without explanation. As the years passed, I developed new skills I never expected to need in my 70s, helping with middle school homework, navigating youth sports registrations, understanding teenage social dynamics. I learned to text and use social media to keep track of the children's activities and friends. I became adept at stretching dollars through couponing, secondhand shopping, and home haircuts. Financial sacrifices were constant. The roof needed replacing, but I could only afford patches. The children outgrew clothes at alarming rates. School field trips, sports equipment, and dental braces stretched our budget to breaking point. I took on additional work grading papers for former teaching colleagues, often staying up until midnight after the children were asleep. Despite the challenges, there was joy in watching the children thrive. Jackson joined the robotics club at school, building remarkable contraptions from salvaged parts. Lily's artwork won regional competitions, her talent, recognized by teachers who helped secure art scholarships for summer programs. Noah, once so clingy, became an outgoing child who made friends easily, though he still had little memory of his mother. 5 years after Melanie left, we had established a new normal. The house was fully ours, with photographs of our life together covering the walls. The children had friends, activities, and routines. I had a network of support, among other grandparents, former colleagues and neighbors. We weren't the family any of us had expected, but we were a family nonetheless. The postcards from Melanie became less frequent, arriving perhaps once a year rather than every few months. I continued to save them in the memory boxes, though Jackson no longer showed interest in seeing them. Lily still studied each one carefully, and Noah asked innocent questions about the mother he barely remembered. On difficult days when my arthritis flared or when school expenses mounted beyond my means, I wondered if Melanie ever thought about the burden she had placed on my aging shoulders. But looking at the children's faces, Jackson's serious concentration, Lily's creative spirit, Noah's joyful energy, I knew I would make the same choice again. They were not a burden. They were my second chance at family, arrived in the most unexpected way. Time has a way of passing more quickly than you expect. In what seemed like the blink of an eye, the small children I had taken in were teenagers. Jackson turned 16, a quiet, thoughtful young man with a talent for engineering and a serious girlfriend named Tara. Lily was 14, her artistic abilities blossoming into serious consideration of art school after graduation. Noah, now 12, had become a star soccer player with a wide circle of friends and boundless energy that kept me feeling both young and exhausted. At 72, I managed my advancing arthritis with medication and gentle yoga, determined to keep up with the teenagers' busy schedules. My hair had gone completely white, and reading glasses were now a permanent fixture on a chain around my neck. I had long since given up the idea of the peaceful retirement I once envisioned, but found unexpected fulfillment in this second round of parenting. Jackson got his driver's license on his 16th birthday, after months of practice in the same car I had once taught Melanie to drive in. The symmetry wasn't lost on either of us, though we didn't speak of it. He was a cautious driver, serious about responsibility in all areas of his life. His relationship with Tara had introduced him to her large, stable family, where her father became something of a mentor to him. Tara's dad is teaching me about college applications, he told me one evening while helping wash dishes. He thinks I could get an engineering scholarship if I keep my grades up. That's wonderful, I said, noticing how he now towered over me, this child who had once been a solemn 6-year-old holding his siblings' hands. Have you thought about where you might want to apply? Somewhere close, he answered immediately. I don't want to go too far from home. Home. The word warmed my heart. This house, this life we had built together, was home to him in a way his life with Melanie had never been. Lily's teenage years brought different challenges. As she developed, her identity questions about her mother grew more frequent and specific. Finding old photographs in the attic one day sparked an intense curiosity that had been dormant for years. Did Mom ever paint or draw? She asked, studying a rare photo of Melanie from high school. Is that where I get my artistic ability? She did, I answered honestly. She won an art contest in 10th grade with a beautiful watercolor landscape. Your talent might come from her, yes. These conversations were delicate. I wanted to honor Lily's need to understand her origins without idealizing the mother who had abandoned her. I shared positive memories of Melanie's creativity and sense of humor, while acknowledging that she had made choices that hurt her children. Noah, entering middle school, began having behavioral problems that his elementary teachers had never reported. He talked back to teachers, got into minor fights, and showed uncharacteristic defiance. The school counselor suggested these issues stemmed from abandonment and identity questions, typical of children his age. The preteen years are when children really begin processing early trauma, she explained during a conference. Even though Noah was too young to remember his mother leaving, that abandonment lives in his subconscious. Now that he's approaching the age where identity becomes important, those feelings are surfacing. We enrolled Noah in counseling, where he finally began asking the hardest questions. Why didn't she want us? Was it something I did? Am I like her? These were questions I had been dreading for years, questions without satisfactory answers. I could only offer reassurance that nothing the children did caused Melanie's departure, that her choices reflected her own struggles, not their worthiness of love. As the children reached ages where they could understand more about their mother, our conversations grew more complex. Jackson researched legal name change procedures, expressing interest in taking my last name officially. I don't want her name anymore, he said flatly. You're the one who raised me. You're the one who stayed." Lily, more conflicted about her feelings toward Melanie, began secretly searching for information about her mother online. I discovered this when checking the browser history on our shared computer, finding searches for Melanie's name in various cities mentioned on postcards over the years. High school brought new milestones: Jackson's first prom, with Tara Lily's artwork being displayed at a professional gallery, Noah making the varsity soccer team as a 7th grader. Each achievement filled me with pride, tinged with sadness that Melanie was missing these moments by choice. The financial strain of approaching college applications weighed heavily on me. Despite careful saving and a college fund for each child, the rising costs of higher education far outpaced my ability to save on a limited income. Jackson began working part-time at a local hardware store, insisting on contributing to his own college fund, despite my protests. "You've done enough, Grandma Cat," he said with the quiet determination that defined him. "Let me help." Family therapy became an important part of our routine as the children processed their feelings about abandonment. The therapist helped them understand that Melanie's choices weren't a reflection of their value, but rather her own limitations. These sessions were painful, but healing, giving the children language to express complex emotions they had carried silently for years. Jackson's relationship with Tara's family provided him with important male influences. Her father taught him to change oil in his car, discussed career paths, and attended his robotics competitions when Jackson was competing. This relationship was healing for him, showing what healthy family support could look like. Our relatively stable life was disrupted when Lily believed she had found a recent photograph of Melanie online. The image showed a woman who resembled an older version of Melanie at a charity gala in Chicago, arm in arm with a well-dressed older man. Lily was convinced it was her mother now, apparently living a comfortable life without her children. "She looks happy," Lily said, her voice small and hurt as she showed me the photograph. "She looks like she doesn't miss us at all." I couldn't tell if the woman was truly Melanie. The image was grainy, taken from a distance, but the possibility reopened wounds I thought had begun to heal. If Melanie had indeed built a new life of apparent prosperity while abandoning her children to my aging care, what could I possibly tell these teenagers to help them make sense of such rejection? Noah, now asking more direct questions as he matured, was the most difficult to comfort. "Why didn't she want us? Was it my fault?" he asked repeatedly, despite our therapist's reassurances. My own health took a concerning turn that year when I was hospitalized with pneumonia for 2 weeks. The children rallied remarkably, with Jackson driving his siblings to school, Lily cooking meals she had learned to prepare for me, and Noah handling laundry and basic household cleaning. Neighbors and church friends organized a meal train and checked in regularly, but the experience crystallized my greatest fear: what would happen to the children if something happened to me. At 74, I was still relatively healthy despite arthritis and high blood pressure, but no longer young. Jackson would soon be 18, legally an adult. But Lily and Noah would need guardianship if I became incapacitated or died before they reached adulthood. Without other close family members willing to take on their care, the possibility of the children entering the foster system loomed as a terrifying last resort. I consulted an attorney about creating contingency guardianship plans, updated my will, and increased my life insurance policy to the maximum amount I could afford. These practical steps couldn't address the emotional impact my absence would have on children who had already lost one mother, but they provided some measure of security for their future. As Jackson's senior year began, with college applications underway and Lily entering high school, I believed we had weathered the worst of our challenges. The children were thriving despite their difficult start, and I had found unexpected purpose in this late-life parenting role. We had no contact with Melanie beyond the increasingly rare postcards, the last one having arrived over 18 months ago from Boston. I had no reason to believe our lives were about to be upended once again by the woman who had walked away 13 years earlier. It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon in October. Jackson was at Robotics Club Lily at art class, and Noah at soccer practice. I was preparing lasagna for dinner, enjoying the rare quiet of an empty house when the doorbell rang. I wiped my hands on a kitchen towel and made my way slowly to the front door. My arthritis particularly bothersome after a morning of gardening. Through the peephole, I saw a woman with sleek blonde hair and expensive sunglasses, accompanied by a middle-aged man in a business suit. Assuming they were selling something, I opened the door with a polite refusal ready on my lips. The words died in my throat as the woman removed her sunglasses. Older, polished, and expensively dressed, but unmistakably Melanie. My daughter. After 13 years of absence, standing on my doorstep as if she had just stepped out for an errand. "Hello, Mother," she said coolly, no warmth or emotion in her voice. "May we come in?" I stood frozen, unable to process the reality of her presence. The man beside her stepped forward, extending a business card. "Mrs. Richards, I'm Howard Benson, Miss Turner's attorney. We'd like to discuss an urgent family matter with you." Turner. She had changed her last name. This small detail somehow cut through my shock, allowing me to find my voice. "Melanie," I whispered still, not moving from the doorway. "After 13 years, you just show up without warning. Are you going to invite us in? Or shall we discuss private family matters on your front porch for all the neighbors to hear?" she asked, her tone impatient. I stepped aside, mechanically watching, as my daughter entered the home where I had raised her children in her absence. Her gaze swept critically around the living room, taking in the comfortable but worn furniture, the walls covered with framed school photographs, art projects, and sports trophies. "Quaint," she remarked, removing her designer coat and draping it over the back of my favorite armchair before sitting down. Her attorney remained standing until I gestured weakly toward the sofa. "Would you like some water, coffee?" I asked, automatically social niceties kicking in despite my shock. "No," Melanie replied. "This isn't a social call." The attorney opened his briefcase, removing a folder of documents. "Mrs. Richards, we're here to discuss the immediate transition of custody of Jackson Lilly and Noah Turner back to their biological mother." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Transition of custody," I repeated, after 13 years of complete absence from their lives. Melanie's expression hardened. "I'm here to reclaim custody of my children. You had no right to keep them from me all these years." "Keep them from you?" I gasped, disbelief turning to anger. "You left them with me. You abandoned them with nothing but a note saying, 'Mom needs time.'" "I was forced to leave due to an abusive relationship," Melanie countered smoothly. "I've been trying to maintain contact and rebuild my life so I could provide properly for my children. You've consistently prevented meaningful communication and alienated them from me." The version of events she presented was so twisted, so completely contrary to reality, that I could only stare at her in stunned silence. 13 years of postcards without return addresses or phone numbers. 13 years without a single attempt to visit, call, or provide financial support. 13 years during which I had struggled to give her children stability while preserving her memory in a positive light. "We have documentation of Miss Turner's attempts to maintain contact," the attorney continued, sliding papers across my coffee table. "We're prepared to file for immediate custody transfer with court action if necessary." I glanced at the papers, recognizing copies of the occasional postcards Melanie had sent over the years. The very postcards I had faithfully shown to the children and preserved in their memory boxes. Now these tokens were being presented as evidence of consistent contact attempts that I had supposedly hidden. "Where are the children now?" Melanie demanded, checking her expensive watch. "I want to see them immediately." "They're at after-school activities," I answered, finding strength in my protective instinct. "And you are not seeing them without preparation. They haven't seen you in 13 years, Melanie. You can't just walk back into their lives and expect them to be overjoyed." "They're my children," she snapped. "I have the right to see them whenever I want." "Actually, you don't," I said, rising from my chair. "I have full legal guardianship granted by the court after you abandon them. Any visitation would need to be approved by the family court judge who granted that guardianship." The attorney cleared his throat. "About that guardianship. My client's circumstances have changed significantly. She's now married to Thomas Turner, CEO of Turner Pharmaceuticals. They have a stable home, substantial financial resources, and can provide opportunities for the children that you at your advanced age and limited means simply cannot." The implication was clear. Melanie had married money and now wanted to play mother again. The children were accessories to her new life, not individuals with 13 years of history without her. "Why now?" I asked, looking directly at my daughter. "After 13 years, why come back now?" Something flickered across her face. Discomfort, perhaps even shame, before her cool mask returned. "Thomas and I want a family. These are my children, and it's time they came home where they belong." "This is their home," I said firmly. "This is where they've grown up, where their friends are, where their schools are. You can't uproot them to satisfy your husband's desire for an instant family." "We have unlimited resources for legal representation," the attorney interjected, "and courts generally favor biological parents over grandparents, regardless of history. It would be in everyone's best interest to arrange a voluntary transition rather than a protracted court battle." The threat was clear and terrifying. My retirement savings were gone, spent on raising 3 children I never expected to care for. I couldn't afford expensive legal battles against unlimited resources, but I also couldn't abandon these children to a stranger who happened to share their DNA. "I think you should leave now," I said, standing as straight as my arthritic back allowed. "Any communication can go through proper legal channels. I will not discuss this further without my own attorney present, and I certainly won't allow you to ambush the children with your sudden reappearance." Melanie's face hardened. "This isn't over, Mother. We'll be filing emergency custody papers tomorrow morning. Prepare the children." After they left, I collapsed onto the sofa, my entire body shaking. How could I possibly tell 3 teenagers that the mother who abandoned them had returned not with apologies or explanations, but with legal demands and a new wealthy husband? How could I protect them from another potential abandonment if Melanie's interest in playing mother faded again? I had just enough time to call my attorney before Jackson's car pulled into the driveway. He entered the house with his usual quiet presence, immediately sensing something was wrong. "Grandma Cat, what happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." In many ways I had. That evening, after everyone was home, I gathered the children in our living room. Lily sat cross-legged on the floor, sketching, as she often did during family discussions. Noah sprawled on the rug soccer ball still at his feet. Jackson perched tensely on the edge of the sofa, already alert to the seriousness of the situation. "I need to tell you something difficult." I began, my voice steady, despite my inner turmoil. "Your mother came to the house today. The reaction was immediate and varied. Jackson's face hardened into a mask of anger. Lily's pencil froze mid-stroke, her eyes widening in shock. Noah, who barely remembered Melanie, looked more confused than anything. "What did she want?" Jackson asked, his voice tight with suppressed emotion. I explained as gently as possible about Melanie's return, her marriage to a wealthy man, and her desire to reclaim custody. I emphasized that I would fight with everything I had to maintain our family, but also prepared them for the possibility of court appearances and questions from judges and social workers. "I'm 18 in 4 months," Jackson said firmly. "She has no legal claim on me, and I want nothing to do with her. I won't go with her no matter what any court says." Lily's reaction was more complex. "Does she look the same? Did she ask about us? About me?" "She's changed," I answered honestly. "And yes, she asked about all of you." Noah, always the most vulnerable due to his young age, when Melanie left, asked the hardest question: "Does she want to be our mom again? Will we have to leave you?" I pulled him close, this gangly 12-year-old who still needed such reassurance. "No one is taking you anywhere without a fight. This is your home, and I am your family in all the ways that truly matter." We held an emergency family meeting, making promises to stand together no matter what happened. Jackson, nearly an adult, swore he would take legal responsibility for his siblings if necessary once he turned 18. Lily, torn between curiosity about her mother and loyalty to me, agreed not to contact Melanie without discussing it first. Noah simply clung to me, reverting to the fearful toddler he had been when first left in my care. That night I contacted a grandparent advocacy group that offered affordable legal representation for custody cases. The attorney they connected me with was experienced, but honest about our challenges. "Biological parents have strong presumptive rights in family court," she explained. "However, abandonment for 13 years is significant. We'll need to document everything: the original note, the sparse communication, your guardianship orders, and most importantly, the children's wishes, particularly for the older two." I spent sleepless nights gathering 13 years of documentation, school records, showing my signature on every report card, the medical history with me, listed as guardian, the memory boxes containing Melanie's infrequent postcards, financial records showing she had never provided a penny of support. Each piece of paper represented a day, a year, a milestone where I had been present and she had been absent. As I organized these records, in the quiet hours after the children went to bed, I remembered the envelope from Jackson's backpack, the original note, and the $300 that had been my only resources when 3 children suddenly became my responsibility. Unlike the postcards Melanie had occasionally sent, I had never shown the children this final message from their mother. Now, it might be our strongest protection against her sudden claim. The family court was intimidating despite my years as a teacher and my comfort with institutional settings. Our attorney, Patricia Gonzalez, met us outside the courtroom, reviewing last-minute details before we entered. Jackson, now nearly 18, insisted on attending despite not being required to do so. Lily and Noah waited anxiously in a separate room with a court advocate, as the judge had requested they not be present for initial testimony. Melanie arrived with her attorney and her husband, Thomas Turner, a distinguished-looking man in his 50s. She wore an elegant suit that probably cost more than a month of our household expenses. They were flanked by 2 additional attorneys carrying multiple briefcases, the unlimited legal resources we had been warned about. The hearing began with Melanie's testimony. She presented herself as a victim of circumstances, a young mother in an abusive relationship who had made the painful choice to leave her children temporarily for their safety. She claimed to have maintained regular contact through postcards, phone calls, and even gifts that she alleged I must have hidden from the children. She presented enlarged photographs of the postcards she had sent, portraying them as evidence of consistent communication rather than the sporadic impersonal notes they truly were. I've been working all these years to create a stable home where my children could thrive, she testified, dabbing at non-existent tears. Now that I've finally achieved that with my husband, my mother refuses to allow my children to benefit from the opportunities we can provide. Her husband testified about their 5-bedroom home in an exclusive neighborhood, the private schools they had already contacted, and the trust funds they had established for each child. He spoke about tennis courts and swimming pools, European vacations, and sailing lessons, material advantages, far beyond anything I could provide on my teacher's pension. Throughout their testimony, I noticed they spoke about what they could give the children, never about who the children had become during the 13 years of Melanie's absence. They didn't know Jackson's passion for robotics, Lily's dreams of art school, or Noah's soccer achievements. They were offering things, not recognition of 3 unique individuals with established lives. When my turn came to testify, I spoke simply about the 13 years of daily care, from helping with homework to attending every school concert, from teaching them to ride bikes to guiding them through first heartbreaks. I showed school records, medical history, and documentation of the legal guardianship process. These children have been raised in a loving, stable home, I testified. They're thriving in their schools, have established friendships, and are deeply embedded in their community. Uprooting them now to satisfy Miss Turner's sudden desire to parent would cause tremendous emotional harm. The most damaging evidence against Melanie was financial records showing she had never provided child support, despite the court's attempts to establish it during the original guardianship proceedings. While she and her husband now had significant resources, she had contributed nothing to her children's upbringing for 13 years. The judge, a thoughtful man in his 60s, ordered an evaluation of the children by a court psychologist before making any decisions. He also scheduled private interviews with each child to determine their preferences, though he noted that only Jackson's wishes would carry legal weight due to his age. Melanie's husband testified about their financial stability, presenting investment statements and property deeds. We can provide these children with every advantage, the best schools, travel, opportunities, connections that will benefit them throughout their lives. We have resources that, frankly, Mrs. Richards simply cannot match at her age and with her limited income. The implication that money could compensate for 13 years of abandonment made my blood boil, but I maintained my composure. This wasn't about me or even about Melanie. It was about what was best for the children. The court psychologist's report was read into evidence at the second hearing 2 weeks later. It stated that all 3 children showed signs of abandonment trauma but had formed secure attachment to me as their psychological parent. The report recommended maintaining their current living situation with me, with any contact with Melanie to be introduced gradually and under professional supervision. The judge asked to speak privately with each child. Jackson went first, returning with red-rimmed eyes but a determined expression. Lily went next, staying in the judge's chambers for nearly 45 minutes. Noah, visibly nervous, was in the judge's chambers for just 15 minutes before returning to sit close beside me. As the judge prepared to announce his temporary ruling, I suddenly remembered the envelope I had preserved all these years. I whispered urgently to my attorney, who requested permission to present additional evidence. Your Honor, in the initial days after the children were left with my client, she found this sealed envelope in the oldest child's backpack. It contains a handwritten letter from Miss Turner that directly contradicts her testimony about her intentions when leaving the children. I handed the preserved envelope to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. The envelope was slightly yellowed with age, but still sealed with the original tape. The judge opened it carefully, reading the contents silently. His expression changed from neutral to deeply troubled as he read. "Miss Turner," he said, looking directly at Melanie, "are you familiar with this document?" Melanie glanced at the letter, her face paling slightly before she composed herself. "I don't recall writing that, Your Honor. It was a very stressful time in my life." The judge read the letter aloud for the court record. "I can't do this anymore. The kids deserve better than me. I'm not cut out to be a mother and never wanted this responsibility. I release all parental rights to my mother, Caitlin Richards. Please don't try to find me. I've started a new life and don't want to be reminded of my mistakes. The money is all I can give them. Melanie." The courtroom fell silent. Melanie's carefully constructed narrative of a mother forced to leave temporarily for her children's safety crumbled with each word. Her attorney whispered urgently to her, but the damage was done. The judge looked at me with a mix of compassion and respect. "Mrs. Richards, have the children seen this letter?" "No, Your Honor," I answered quietly. I felt it would be too painful for them to know their mother saw them as mistakes. "Do they know about this?" he asked, holding up the letter. "Not yet," I replied. The judge nodded, understanding my protection of the children from this final rejection. He then turned to Melanie. "Miss Turner, in light of this evidence which appears to be in your handwriting and directly contradicts your testimony, would you like to revise your statement to this court?" Under pressure from both the judge and her own legal team, Melanie's facade finally crumbled. She admitted that she had left the children because her boyfriend at the time didn't want to be involved with another man's children. She acknowledged that she had made no meaningful attempt to contact the children beyond occasional postcards. Most damning, she confessed that her current interest in reclaiming custody stemmed primarily from her new husband's desire for a family, coupled with their discovery that he couldn't have biological children. The judge called the children into the courtroom to hear a portion of the truth directly from their mother. Jackson stood tall and unforgiving, his arm protectively around Noah's shoulders. Lily stared at the mother. She barely remembered searching for connection in a stranger's face. "I was young and selfish," Melanie admitted, under the judge's firm guidance. "I wasn't ready to be a mother then. I thought you'd be better off with Grandma Cat. And now you think you can just take us back because you married a rich guy?" Jackson asked, his voice shaking with anger. "We're not possessions you can abandon and reclaim whenever it's convenient." The judge intervened before the confrontation could escalate further. His ruling was clear: I would retain full legal custody of all 3 children. Melanie would be granted supervised visitation rights, only beginning with therapeutic family sessions if the children were willing to participate. The court finds that the children's best interests are served by maintaining the stable, loving home they have known for 13 years, the judge stated. Biological connection is important, but it does not outweigh the psychological parent-child relationship that has been established between these children and their grandmother, who stepped up when their mother stepped away. In the months that followed the trial, we began the process of healing from old wounds reopened by Melanie's return. Jackson refused any contact with Melanie, legally changing his last name to Richards on his 18th birthday. Lily chose to attend a few therapy sessions with Melanie, working through her complex feelings with professional support. Noah, still forming his understanding of the situation, agreed to occasional supervised visits, but maintained that I was his real mom. Melanie and her husband moved to a nearby suburb, ostensibly to be closer to the children. The cynical part of me wondered if Thomas Turner had lost interest in playing father once he realized the children weren't the grateful, malleable youngsters he had envisioned. Their lavish gifts often went unacknowledged, particularly by Jackson, who wanted nothing from them. As for me, I found unexpected peace in the court's validation of my role in these children's lives. After 13 years of improvising parenthood in my retirement, years after countless sacrifices and sleepless nights after stretching limited resources to provide for 3 growing children, I had official recognition of what we had known. All along, family is built through love and commitment, not merely through biology. Jackson is now studying engineering at the State University, coming home regularly for Sunday dinners. Lily is preparing her portfolio for art school applications, her talent flourishing despite, or perhaps because of the emotional journey she's navigated. Noah continues to excel in soccer, his coach suggesting he has potential for athletic scholarships in a few years. As for me, I'm approaching 80 with more energy than many would expect, fueled by the joy of seeing these children overcome their difficult beginnings to become remarkable young people. I never expected a second chapter of motherhood in my retirement years, but it has been the most challenging and rewarding experience of my life. Family isn't always what we expect or plan for. Sometimes it arrives in the form of 3 small children with backpacks left just for an hour that becomes a lifetime. Sometimes the most profound bonds are forged not through the circumstances of birth, but through the choice to remain, to nurture, to love, consistently even when it's difficult. Have you ever had to step up for family in unexpected ways? Has someone in your life chosen to be there for you when they could have walked away? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if my journey touched your heart, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that sometimes the most beautiful families are the ones we build through love rather than obligation. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, true family is defined by who stays, not who shares your DNA.